let's say Pope Francis does the next step and just does away with the traditional mass and finally says you are no longer allowed to do this. Where does that leave us as lay people to, what do we do in this moment, at that moment, I should say? In order to stay where we're supposed to as far as our authority hierarchy, we, most would say, okay, well then you need to go to the Novus Ordo, because that is what our Pope is telling us we have to do, and to remain within our authority structure, we have to listen to that. But if you know that's, where does that leave us? I guess I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, I mean, it's certainly difficult, and I say it's difficult because right now, at the crux of the terrible crisis that's afflicting the church is this conflict, and it's a very real conflict. It's a conflict between obedience to the current magisterium and obedience and fidelity to perennial church doctrine, Catholic Church teaching, and Catholic worship. It's a very difficult situation because basically I would say no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to do it 100% correct as a Catholic, because to do it 100% correctly as a Catholic, I would have to be, perfectly obedient to the current magisterium, and I would have to be perfectly obedient to Catholic doctrine and Catholic worship. I mean, that's Catholicism. The crisis doesn't permit me to do that and it doesn't for no one. Everybody's in a difficult situation. That's why you also see traditional Catholics kind of like taking different routes. Because the reality is that if I'm going to be 100% faithful to Catholic doctrine and worship, I'm going to run into problems with the hierarchy. And I'm not going to really be able to be 100% obedient. There's going to be a problem there. And vice versa. If I'm being 100% obedient to the current magisterium, I guarantee you that you've got a huge problem in being 100% faithful to church doctrine and Catholic church work and the Catholic worship. So when you say, where does it leave you? I mean, look, recognize you're in a difficult position, and that's why it's so important to really be sincere and devout in praying and asking for God's help. I mean, ultimately, I would say God and our Blessed Mother are the only ones who are going to help you, and pray for their guidance. That's also why I'm trying to pray more and more to the Holy Ghost, because boy, do we need the help of the Holy Ghost. I encourage you, step up your devotion to the Holy Ghost. But like on a real practical point, like if you were to say tomorrow, the Latin Mass that I was going to up until now is no longer there, what do? I would say, look, you're going to have difficulties obviously with the church hierarchy, because they're telling you to go to the Novus Ordo, but you can't do that. You can't go against Catholic worship, and you can't go against really the Catholic magisterium of 2,000 years. I mean, maybe the current crop of bishops are saying this, but if you look at all the bishops, all the Catholic bishops of the entire history of the Catholic Church, I mean, you'd be completely disobeying them were you to go to the Novus Ordo. But anyway, the point is that my recommendation would be, look, figure out where the nearest Latin Mass is to you, and go. I mean, it's maybe the SSPX. I don't want to open another can of worms, but for now, I'm just going to say maybe City Vacantes. I mean, at this point, you go to the Latin Mass and pray a lot to God to help you so that you'll be able to, be on the right path. It's difficult. It is difficult. There's no doubt about that. But again, that's why, again, I would lay the greatest emphasis on turn to God, turn to our Blessed Mother in prayer, because they know your situation. They know the situation in the church, and God is faithful. I mean, He's going to help you. It may not be necessarily evident at first, how He's helping you, but He will.